Alright, hey everyone, welcome back to another video of Salesforce Makes Sense. This is Himanshu and we'll continue our journey of Apex Developer Curriculum. And the last session we covered maps. We completed a bit of our understanding around collections, and now we'll jump into understanding loops in Apex, right? So what are loops? Loops are basically things that run more than once, right? So that's a loop, right? You probably dance in a loop, you probably sing in a loop, you probably write on a loop, you do things on a loop. So what does that mean? That means that you whatever you're doing is recurring, right? It's not just once, it is more than once. So that's where loops come into the picture. And in Apex, or rather in Salesforce development, you'll need to write loops to iterate over your records, iterate over your elements, iterate over certain values that you have received, and take decisions accordingly, right? So that's where loops come in picture. If I were to ask you, what are the certifications that you currently have from Salesforce? So if you had 5 certifications, you would have to list them one by one, correct? So that's a loop. So you'd start with the first certification, second one, third one, fourth one, and the fifth one. So this would be a loop of 5 times, and you will give me the name of the certification that you have achieved, right? If I ask you how many contact records do you have in your system, you'll basically loop through your entire database of contact records and you'll tell me, okay, this is the final count that I have. So these are the scenarios, or these are situations wherein recurrence might occur, and whenever there is recurrence, or whenever you have a collection or a variable that holds more than one values, you might need to iterate over it. And if you have to iterate over it, for loops is your way to go. All right, so let's jump into developer console and let's create a new class, and I'll call it loops in Apex. All right, I'll create a static method handle for loops. Okay, so first of all, coming to the syntax, how do you write a loop? You basically start with the keyword for. You see, this is purple in color, which means it's a reserved keyword, and this is for using the for loop, right? And then you add a bracket here and you add your curly braces to execute a set of statements here. All right. Now inside this bracket, what you need to do is you need to tell the system what kind of loop are you planning to do, how many times are you wanting to iterate over it, right? And how do you want it to know how to iterate? So these are the 3 things. The first thing is you need to declare a variable here. Okay, you'll say that I'm trying to declare a variable that's called I. It is initially assigned to 0, which is why I've put equal to 0, and it is a number variable because I've given it a integer data type. Perfect. Semicolon. That completes your first assignment or first part of your for loop. The second thing you need to tell the system is how long do you want the loop to run. So I should be less than 5, which means it should start from 0, run for 1, 2, 3, 4, and when it reaches the fifth number, it should not continue. All right, and that's your second bit of the for loop. And what's the third thing? You want to tell the system how frequently do you want this variable to be incremented. So what I'll say is I equals I plus 1, meaning I want this loop to run on the variable I starting from 0 until 5, and it should increment the I value one by one. Does that make sense? Right? So the short code of writing I equal to I plus 1 is I plus plus. And this becomes your for loop. That's it. This is your syntax. All right, so we have been able to save it successfully. And what I would want to do is I'll simply say system.debug. I want to print the value of I. I value is, and I'll just say plus I so that I can see whatever value is here should come up here. Okay, let's see this in action and then we'll understand it better. So this time the class name should be loops in Apex dot handle for loops, no parameters. So I'll just say execute. All right, let's take a look at the debug only log. And you'll notice that you have now 5 statements, 5 debug statements, which is line number 5, which is a user debug. It has run for 5 times. Why? Because you had a iterator here that started off with 0. So when it started off with 0, it came in here, it printed the debug log. It said I value is 0, the first one. All right. So this is what got executed. I equal to 0. Is 0 less than 5? True. Go inside and do your thing. I've done my thing. Okay, then come back here and increment the I variable. So 0 becomes 1 as part of this increment. It checks, is 1 less than 5? True. Go inside. Print it for 1. Do your thing. Go back here. Increment your value of I2 plus 1. So now it becomes 2. Is 2 less than 5? Yes. Go inside the loop. Continue. Print it for 2. Check. I plus plus. This would be 3. This would be 4. And then when it reaches 5, it increments the value to 5, comes here and checks, is 5 less than 5? No, so don't go inside, which is why the debug logs that you see are only till 4. So this thing has iterated 5 times, starting from 0 till 4. You might ask, Himanshu, is there any other way I can tackle the fifth element? Yes, if you want to start with 1, go ahead and start with 1 and just call it I less than equal to 5. Now what it will print is it will print 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Depends on where you start and how you want to end. Okay, so you see the tweak I made, I just started off with 1 and I said less than equal to 5. So once I do that, now the debug log will print 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Because for the for the variable value 5, 5 less than equal to 5 is true because I have put a less than equal to sign. Execute, debug only. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But what is the reason of starting with 0? Because our array indexes that we talked about, right? List, set, map, all the indexes will start from 0. They'll not start from 1. So it's always safe and better if you want to work on all the values that you are getting from your collections, you'll have to start from 0. All right, I'll quickly show you a simple list, right? So let's define a list of strings, my characters. All right, so this is a list of string. This is the declaration and I want to assign some values. So let's assign it here right away. Okay. Let's say trainer, mentor, reader, investor. All right. So these are the four strings which are part of my characters variable. Perfect. Now, how do I iterate over it? Because now if you see, you want to iterate over your my character string and print each value one by one through your iterator. Now, if you're able to figure this out on your own, take a pause here, try to write it on your own and put a comment. If you're not, don't worry, we'll just go ahead and start this. So let's keep our for loop that we just learned right below. And now let's create a new for loop. This is the syntax. This is the structure. Now, the first thing what I want is I want the variable that I want to assign or that I want to loop through. Correct? So what is the kind of variable that I want to loop through? I want to loop through the string variables, correct? String, because my variable types are string, correct? Or let's do this. Before showing you this particular variation, let me take you to the standard variation. Let's start with the integer version only. So since this would be the 0th index, this would be 1, this would be 2, this would be 3. So I'll say integer I should be equal to 0. I should be less than 3, I plus plus, and I can say system.debug my characters of I. So if this is 0, it will print trainer. If this is 1, it will print mentor. If this is 2, it is reader, and so on. All right. Or you can even use the get method, I believe. So you can just say dot get I. So it will run for 0, 1, 2. So 0, 1, 2, 3. So it should run till 4, right? So it should be 0, 1, 2, 3. So it should be I less than 4. So if I save it here, this should run 4 times and it should print the characters that I have on my string. Okay, let's now get rid of the for loop below and let's see if this works as expected or not. Save. Execute. Debug only. So you see, you're getting the debug log and each element that is part of your string, the list of string, is printed one by one. So it started off with 0. It said my characters dot get 0. So it printed this particular variable value. It went till 1, 2, 3, and then when it reached 4, 4 less than 4 is false, so it did not go inside and print it. All right. But what did we really do here? I simply counted that this is the size, so I put the number 4, 5 according to my count. But then my characters might have 4 values, you might have 7 different characters. So how do I make it dynamic? This particular value, how do I make it dynamic? I think you know the answer to this. How can I make this value to show the exact count of the number of strings I have on my list? I can say my characters dot size, because this method tells me the number of records that my list contains. So this is what I can use, the size method. All right, so the size method will automatically evaluate to 4. If there are 5 characters, it will be 5, so it will run automatically. I don't have to put the count. Make sense? Let's take a look if this works. So it will start with the 0th index and it has gone till 4. Why? Because the size will return 4. This is 4. The count would come as 4, which is a number. So it will always be able to evaluate it. Perfect. Now there's one more way of doing it. So this was our very static standard way, the very plain basic way. Correct? Now let me write the for loop one more time. This time I'll write it a bit differently. So when you're working on collections, right? You want to iterate over which kind of data type here? You want to iterate over the string data type. Correct? So you have to define a variable value for the string data type that you want to iterate on. So I'll simply say my character name. Let's say this is my variable name. Okay, so you can compare this with I. Basically, this is your variable. See, we were using I, right? So I can use the character name now. Each character name would be here. But how do I tell the system that I want to iterate over the my characters list I have? I can simply put a colon and I can put the name of the collection that has all my values. As simple as that. And I can simply print my character name. Let's quickly try to save it and let's get rid of the below one now. Save. Let's see if it saves or not first of all. It saved up fine. So what is the way of reading it? You will say for each my character name in. So this colon will be replaced as in my characters. So for each character of type string that I have in my characters variable, show the debug log for each one of them. So each one of the string is being held on what variable? This variable that I've defined here. Okay, so if you quickly now take a look, this will debug each name again. Let's see. Debug only. So you see, each name is getting printed. No difference compared to the previous one, but this is another way of writing it. All right. If you had, let's say, another list, right? Or let's say you had a set this time, set of IDs. My account IDs equals new set of IDs, let's say. So you have to have an ID, right? So ID would be, let's say, let's try to save some random IDs. Let's try to save this line first. I just want to see if this is correct. Yeah, okay. So now I want to iterate over my set. So how do I do it? Either I go that integer route by saying my account ID is dot size, or I can simply say for each ID in. See, I'm saying in, but I'm typing colon because that's the syntax, but that's how you say it. So for each account ID in my account IDs variable, I want to print the account ID value. Save. Does this save up fine first of all? It saved up fine. Let's try to execute it and let's see the debug statements now. So it is giving me an error saying invalid ID, the value that I've put. Why? Because the data type is ID, I need to give it a relevant ID. So what is a relevant ID? Let's go to Salesforce and let's go to accounts or contacts or any object and we'll pick the record ID of any one of those values. Okay, so the ID at ID data type is a record ID data type. So I'll just take Burlington, China, and here on the URL, I should be able to get this 18-digit ID. Okay, so I'll paste this here and then let's open another record, America Burlington, and let's copy this particular ID. So now it should not give me the error on the kind of data I'm trying to hold in the ID at ID variable. Let's now execute it again. It is now executing fine because the ID type is fine. And if I take a look at the debug statements, you see I'm seeing the IDs being iterated as expected using my for loop. All right, one more example. Let's quickly do one more example. Map of ID comma string. Okay, my account info equals new map of ID comma string, and I'll simply say my account info dot put. I'll just put two dummy values. And what should be the ID? I'll just copy this ID and put them as the key. This is the first one, and this would be the second one. All right. So if you have seen the previous 2 or 3 videos around collections, these all will make sense to you. Like it's very straightforward, right? Now I have a map collection. How do I iterate over it? I say again for. Now, what kind of data would I want to iterate on? I would want to iterate on each key that is available, correct? So I want to iterate on the first key, then print the name. Second key, print the name, correct? So what kind of data type does the key hold? It is of ID type. So I can simply say ID record ID. Let's say that's my variable. For each record ID in, now what is the kind of collection that I want to give here? I can say my account info because that is the map I want to work on. But how do I tell the system that I want to iterate over the keys? Yes, so if you were able to understand this from the previous video, we have a function or a method that's called keyset. So this will give you the list of IDs, correct? So you can iterate over each record ID from myAccountInfo.keyset. And you can print here system.debug record ID. And now you also want the value corresponding to that particular ID. So how do you get the value? If you have the map, if you have the key information, how do you get the value? Again, if you were able to understand from the previous video, you can use the get method, correct? So I'll say my account info, which is the map variable dot get, and I'll put the record ID variable that's currently my iterator. So this will give me the value for the record ID or the ID in question. Let's try to save it first of all. Does this save up fine? Saved up fine. Let's try to execute it. And we'll be now interested in the line 22 debug logs. Let's see, it should give two records. See line 22, 22, the ID is this particular variable and the value is Salesforce. Makes sense. See, it was smartly able to understand that for each record ID, it printed the record ID by going inside the iteration for each record, and then it was able to give the value by using the get method. All right, so I hope you are able to understand this particular syntax. The previous one was the basic one. If you want to proceed with that, that's fine. But you see the advantage that you get by writing this syntax. You can, if you have a map or if you have a collection, you can simply use the get command, put the key inside, which is your iterator, and you can get the value out of it. Okay, awesome. So that was about for loops. A very, again, a very basic understanding, but it is essential for you to build your foundation and be ready for what's coming next, right? Uh, there's one more type of for loops that you can write, which are advanced Sokal for loops. Basically, what you can do is you can simply say for each account in, and you can actually do a query here. Even this is possible, but it has to be a account query. Okay, and you can do something like system.debug account.name. So if you try to save it, let's see what happens. I'm just trying to save it. It's taking some time. So it's saved up fine. So what does this line mean? This means for each account ACC in this particular query. Now, why am I able to do this? There's another way of writing this. If I were to create a list, I understand we have not done SOQL yet, or you might not have done SOQL yet, but understand that this is how you query the database. So don't worry about this one, okay? This is just added information in this uh, video, but we'll cover this extensively when we do the use cases after the SOQL and the SOCL videos are complete. Okay, so understand that a query returns a list of records. Understand just this. It queries the database and finds 5 records. So this 5 records are nothing but a collection of account records. So I can say account records equals, and I can actually put the query here. All right, and then I can leverage this list variable and I can iterate over them. Because why? My list variable has account type list, so I can say for each account in account records, give me the account.name. So this is one way of writing it. Correct? The advanced for loop says you can even put your query inside the loop right away. You don't have to even assign it to a variable. And what that does is it takes a look at the query, and if it has more than 200 records, it runs the for loop in batches of 200. So that helps in your transaction control. That helps in your governance limits. Okay, so your loops will run in batches of 200, and that's the only benefit you get. Okay, what I've done here is I've just assigned it to a variable. That variable contains the ID and the name of accounts, and you're iterating over each account and you're trying to print the name. All right, if I try to say save and I try to execute it, let's take a look at the debug logs at line number 28 now. So you should see the names of all accounts that are present in the database right now. You see line number 28, sample account, Edge Communication, Pyramid, Burlington, Grand, United, Express, blah, blah, blah. So all your account names have shown up. So your iteration worked perfectly fine. What if I did not assign it to a variable and I directly use the for loop with the query? Let's try that out and let's now see the debug log. Will the debugs change? No, because even this is allowed. Okay, so if I try to say execute, you'll see the same name showing up because now you are again querying over the database, but you are doing it within the for loop. You see the same list of names have come. All right, but don't worry too much. Don't stress too much on this particular syntax. You will be able to understand this once you are done with SOQL and SOCL. Okay, which are the query languages for databases. All right, perfect. I think we are done with what I wanted to explain you as part of operators, functions, conditionals, collections, and loops. These are the foundational structures that you need to understand. Everything else is a joke. You can just consider that. If you know this set of things that we have just covered in the last 6-7 tutorials, you should be good with the foundation and you are ready for actually doing Apex use cases. All right. Now what I have next as part of the next video is some use cases. So what we'll try to do is we'll try to do some use cases. So I have about 7-8 use cases till here. So we'll take one entire section or time wherein I want you to just open your developer edition org and write this codes with me, right? Try to write all the code with me. Right now you are just probably viewing it or trying to do it by seeing the screen, but now I want you to challenge yourself, try to do it on your own, or at least do it with me when we are doing the use cases here. Again, these are not the use cases I was talking about. These are just practice examples that we'll look into. The actual real-time use cases will come very soon. We still have a lot to cover. All right, awesome. So I'll leave this video here and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.